From Washington, here is the news in VOA Special English. Studies of people who voted in Israel show that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party won Tuesday's parliamentary elections. A large number of people with centrist political opinions also voted. The studies were published when the voting ended. They showed Mr. Netanyahu's party won 31 out of 120 seats in Parliament. That is 11 fewer seats than it had in the previous Parliament. A centrist non-religious group took 19 seats. Analysts say that party's leader could become an important official in a new government. Minutes after the studies were published, Mr. Netanyahu released a message on the social media website Facebook. The message said it was clear that Israelis wanted him to continue to be their prime minister. Mr. Netanyahu is still able to form a small majority in Parliament. The United Nations has voted to increase restrictions against North Korea. The move answers North Korea's rocket launch in December, which went against UN rules. The rocket launch is considered part of a secret program to make missiles that can carry powerful explosives. The measure adds 6 groups and 3 people to a UN blacklist. The blacklist restricts their money and property. All 15 members of the UN Security Council agreed to the measure. The vote ends a month-long dispute, mostly between the United States and North Korea's ally, China. The measure is the first in 4 years to increase restrictions against North Korea. Malian forces are in Diaboli, a day after French and Malian forces retook the town from Islamist militants. Diaboli is about 400 kilometers north of the country's capital. People who live there say militants have either fled or are trying to look like civilians. VOA correspondent Idrissa Fall is in Mali. She says calm is also returning to Douentza. Militants seized that town last September. French forces intervened in Mali more than a week ago. French officials were concerned that militants who control the country's north were going to take the capital city. The United States is helping to move French soldiers and equipment into the country. Syrian rights activists say the number of deaths from a suicide car bombing late Monday has risen to at least 42 people. The explosion happened in the central area of Hama. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the attack targeted a building used by pro-government forces. It said some of the dead were civilians. The Syrian state news agency, SANA, said 32 people died in the bombing. It blamed the attack on terrorists. SANA says terrorists are responsible for the 22-month rebellion against President Bashar al-Assad. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said Tuesday that the civil war in Syria is his main immediate test. 3 people have been wounded in a shooting at a college near the city of Houston, Texas. Police say a student and another person were arguing Tuesday at Lone Star College. They took out guns and shot at each other. 1 gunman was wounded. 2 people nearby were also shot. It is not clear if the wounds are serious. Police say both people, who are believed to be the gunmen, have been arrested. Tuesday's shooting comes as the United States is debating the issue of gun control. President Barack Obama has called for stricter gun control. But opponents say the American Constitution permits the right to have weapons. And as the debate goes on, one issue is how to treat the mentally disabled before they ever use a gun to deal with an emotional problem. A new study shows that Americans might consider a self-help technique that is having success treating patients with depression. We have more from Milagros Ardin.
Consider this. Doctors in Britain's National Health Service now help people who are depressed by telling them to read a book. Read a book! And a new study suggests self-help books are an effective treatment for depression. In addition to the books, patients are urged to meet with an advisor who guides them in how to use the information in the books. More than 200 people suffering from depression took part in the study. Half of them were also on antidepressants. Some of the patients were given a self-help guide dealing with emotional problems like being self-assured or overcoming sleep problems. After 4 months, those who read the self-help books had lower levels of depression than those who were treated by a medical doctor. A year later, those in the self-help group were more likely to be staying on top of their depression. Study leader Christopher Williams from the University of Glasgow said, "The guided meetings were most important in getting patients involved in their treatment. The meetings can be held by a general practitioner, avoiding the need to send the patient to a specialist. The new technique takes pressure off of waiting lists for specialists." In Scotland, a telephone service has been set up to help those using the books. The question now for Britain's National Health Service is how to use this model across the country so that people get the help they need. There has been a huge investment in better treatment for depression in Britain recently. The Improving Access to Psychological Therapies program is ready to expand. It is estimated that the self-help approach could save the NHS between $430 million and $1,100 million a year. I'm Milagros Ardin.
Finally, in Special English news, Amnesty International says the Afghan government and its donor partners need to improve aid delivery immediately. The human rights group says this year's winter has already killed 17 people living in temporary camps. Amnesty's Deputy Asia-Pacific Director, Polly Truscott, called the deaths a preventable tragedy.